Hi everyone, I'm Dan, and welcome to my new channel, Voice of Geekdom. This is the first video in a new series which will cover J.R.R. Tolkien's The Silmarillion, chapter by chapter, story by story, examining the text and breaking down the events of the overarching plot. This is not an audio narration, though we will be retelling the story as part of the process, and quoting directly at times, and there will, therefore, be spoilers throughout this series. My hope is that this will be an ideal companion series for first-time readers, as well as an interesting and descriptive accompaniment for the well-seasoned Tolkien scholars amongst us. With that said, The Silmarillion is, while still telling a story, not exactly what you'd call a conventional novel, but more of a historical text which requires a certain amount of cross-examination on the part of the reader to reach a broader understanding. In fact, one of the first things to understand about the Silmarillion is that it is a philosophical creation myth which was written to emulate the various creation myths of human, real-world mythology within Tolkien's literary frame and fictional setting. The professor himself was well known for being a devout Roman Catholic, but the Silmarillion and the world of Arda are not strictly Judeo-Christian allegory. Neither are the inspirations drawn exclusively from the ancient world, or from any one creation myth. Tolkien's world is, rather, a fascinating blend of theological and philosophical concepts, of sources and original ideas. And the opening chapter of The Silmarillion, the Ainulindalë, wraps those concepts in some of the most potent and poetic prose Tolkien ever wrote. When we talk about the subcreation of Arda, we are speaking about the subcreation of Tolkien's fictional world on a meta level, and also the divine creation of Eru Ilúvatar's vision of existence. We will see this vision play out across history in The Silmarillion. Eru Ilúvatar is Arda's quasi-monotheistic intelligent designer. This is a created world, and Eru is its creator. The chapter begins with Eru inventing the Ainur. The text refers to them as the offspring of his thought. After he wills them into existence, his plan begins with the Ainur being assigned their themes to sing in the great music. The Ainur each embody different aspects of Eru's mind, and have different parts to play in each theme, creating a powerful melody of creation, the Song of the Ainur. As the story continues, we will learn a lot more about the host of the Ainur. For now, it suffices to say that the pantheon of the Valar are the greater holy beings of the Ainur, whom we will soon become very familiar with. The Valar are somewhat similar to the ancient Greek or Roman pantheons in conception, even if they behave a little differently, but are very clearly created beings who are mostly subservient to Eru. The Maya are the lesser beings of the Ainur and serve the Valar. Some of these Maya, mentioned in the early chapters of the published Silmarillion, are earlier manifestations of characters that first-time readers will already be familiar with from The Lord of the Rings. We will be covering both classifications of the Ainur, but particularly the 14 Valar in greater detail in the second chapter of the Silmarillion, the Valar Quenta. After teaching them the themes to the great music and completing a first practice session, Eru explains to the Ainur that they have been imbued with the flame imperishable. This secret fire is what allows for free will in the beings which Eru creates. This is the very same fire which Gandalf will refer to when he confronts the Balrog in The Lord of the Rings, crying aloud on the bridge of Khazad-dûm, "I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Arnor." The Ainur begin to harmonize as they collaborate to sing the first theme of the great music. At about this point, the chief antagonist of the Silmarillion is introduced. Melkor is of the Ainur originally, the greatest in fact of the Valar, we are told. And as the music builds into cacophonies of sound that passed beyond hearing into the depths and into the heights, it came into the heart of Melkor to interweave matters of his own imagining that were not in accord with the theme of Ilúvatar. As an aside about music theory, theme and variation in classical music is a type of compositional structure which consists of a strong melody, a theme, which is played as an introduction to the piece, and then the composition repeats the theme but with a number of variations. The composer may subtract notes or add them with each successive variation, or apply a number of other techniques to vary the original theme. This concept serves Tolkien as a metaphor for the infinite complexity of life and existence. We are told that Melkor had gone often into the void places seeking the imperishable flame, for desire grew hot within him to bring into being things of his own, and it seemed to him that Ilúvatar took no thought for the void, and he was impatient of its emptiness. Melkor doesn't understand that Eru's gift of creation only exists in him innately, and is not an acquired ability or resource which exists independent of Eru's mastery. The void is Eru Ilúvatar's blank canvas, or perhaps we should say blank sheet music, upon which he imprints existence itself, and the flame is the means by which he does so. Many that sang nigh him grew despondent, and their thought was disturbed and their music faltered, but some began to attune their music to his rather than to the thought which they had had at first. Then the discord of Melkor spread ever wider, and the melodies which had been heard before foundered in a sea of turbulent sound. It is tempting at this juncture to think of Melkor as merely a maverick musician, a free-spirited individualist who goes against the grain, like a jazz improviser might. I think it is likely that this is not Tolkien's full intent, as we are told explicitly that the themes and variations in the music allow for individualistic endeavours within their set structure. But before we throw this concept away, I think it is worth considering this word discord and what it means in terms of classical music theory. Discord is a technique which Western classical composers will use to generate tension in a piece by introducing disharmony by means of varying pitch outside of certain numerical parameters, known as intervals. An interval is the numerical difference between two notes or chords. The Lord of the Rings soundtrack to the Peter Jackson movies, for example, is full of discordant notes, as are most dramatic film scores. For the non-musical, like myself, the technical details are perhaps not important. What is important is that the existence of Melkor's discord does not necessarily mean, at this point, that the music ceases to be musical, or has descended into chaos, though, as with any art form, this may be subject to opinion. Interestingly, 20th century music from the Jazz Age onward has begun to abandon the Baroque convention, allowing for musical phrases to end in discordant notes, where traditionally these discordant phrases would have been resolved and harmonized by the composer, thus releasing the build-up of tension. If we were to infer Tolkien's opposition to this change in compositional conventions in musical arrangement, it may be possible to see evidence for Tolkien's cultural conservatism and necessary sense of loss through his musical preferences at that time in history. This is perhaps a stretch. I have no idea whether Tolkien himself was a jazz fan or not, but Tolkien's wife Edith was a musician herself, and as a philologist, he would have certainly been very aware of the technical terminology that he employs in this chapter. Something to ponder. As the first theme ends, Ilúvatar smiles and raises his hand, signalling a new beginning, and then a new theme begins to play. Amid the storm, like and yet unlike to the former theme, and it gathered power and had new beauty. But then the discord of Melkor rose in uproar and contended with it, and again there was a war of sound more violent than before, until many of the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and Melkor had the mastery. Melkor has now begun to clearly identify himself as the villain of the piece. By the second movement of the music, we are seeing his true colours come to the surface. Once more, Ilúvatar interjects during the recital, and this time his countenance is stern, and the music itself is described as mere confusion. This is a clear turning point for Melkor's character. His motives are becoming more and more twisted, and his contributions to the music more noticeably troublesome. Now, the third theme begins, once more with another sign from Ilúvatar. For it seemed at first soft and sweet, a mere rippling of gentle sounds in delicate melodies, but it could not be quenched, and it took to itself power and profundity. Here, Melkor's discord begins to break down into repetitious and obnoxious rhythms which disturb the order of the music, and there were two musics progressing at one time. As this sequence develops, we get a clear picture of Melkor as a disruptive and corruptive influence. The two musics are at odds with one another, competing, where one is deep and wide and beautiful, but slow and blended with an immeasurable sorrow, and the second had achieved a unity of its own, but it was loud and vain and endlessly repeated. The first music belongs, and the second, which is clearly meant to refer to Melkor's discord, merely competes. As the second essayed to drown the other music by the violence of its voice, it seemed that its most triumphant notes were taken by the other and woven into its own solemn pattern. This shows us the futility of Melkor's discord and the ability for the music to always find an ultimate superior balance. But again, thinking of the word discord, perhaps this discordant tension in the music is a necessary tension and a key component to the composition. At this point, Ilúvatar stops the music and speaks directly to the Ainur, proclaiming, "Mighty are the Ainur, and mightiest among them is Melkor. But that he may know, and all the Ainur, that I am Ilúvatar. Those things that ye have sung, I will show them forth, that ye may see what ye have done. And thou, Melkor, shalt see that no theme may be played that hath not its uttermost source in me, nor can any alter the music in my despite. For he that attempteth this shall prove but mine instrument in the devising of things more wonderful, which he himself hath not imagined." The Ainur, as one, react with fear, not knowing what to expect or what to make of Eru's proclamation. It is important to remember that these created beings, Melkor included, are newly created in this moment, and therefore inexperienced. Melkor himself was filled with shame, of which came secret anger, which we shall see will inform his later motivations. Ilúvatar then shows to the Ainur a vision of what they have sung, and gifting them with the sight to see it with at the same time, meaning that until this moment they were blind, experiencing only the sound of the music. The Ainur fall silent and observe everything that their music has helped to create, watching the history of the universe unfold before them. We learn from this that the Ainur have some foresight of what is to come in the ages ahead, though we were also told that some things there are that they cannot see, for to none but himself has Ilúvatar revealed all that he has in store. The main surprise that the Ainur receive here is the revelation of the children of Ilúvatar. These are the elves, the immortal firstborn of Ilúvatar, and mortal men, the followers. The Ainur are impressed by this development, which we are told was drawn from the music created by the third and final theme of the music. One other thing that jumps out at us in this passage is that the narrator tells us that Ilúvatar chose a place for his children in the deeps of time and in the midst of the innumerable stars. What this implies is that this is not a young Earth creation myth, and nor is it even necessarily a geocentric model of a universe, though we have precious little data on the second point. This phrase, deeps of time, is a favourite one of Tolkien's, one that appears 4 times in this chapter alone, and actually 7 times throughout the Lord of the Rings and appendices, sometimes even in dialogue. The Ainur then observe the substances and mechanics of the world that their music has created, and the winds and the air, and the matters of which Arda was made, of iron and stone and silver and gold. But most precious to the Ainur was the water. According to the lore of the elves, in water there lives yet the echo of the music of the Ainur, more than in any substance else that is in this earth, and many of the children of Ilúvatar hearken still unsated to the voices of the sea, and yet know not for what they listen. This is a reference to sea longing, a phenomenon we will see affect many characters, both elven and human, throughout the rest of the book. And even in much of the rest of the published legendarium, we even see evidence of it in Legolas during the Lord of the Rings, when he lays eyes upon the ocean for the first time in his life, during the Return of the King. The Ainur then take their cues to assign to themselves a purpose and identity based on everything they have seen in the vision. And here we will also get our first 3 named Valar. Ulmo becomes the Lord of Water and the embodiment of the ocean, while Manwë takes the airs and winds, and Aule the fabric of earth. When Eru takes away the vision, it is remarked upon that the Ainur perceive darkness for the first time. And then, in the absence of the vision, the yearning of the Ainur for the world they have seen becomes tangible, and Eru shows them compassion and understanding, proclaiming, "Ea, let these things be, and I will send forth into the void the flame imperishable, and it shall be at the heart of the world, and the world shall be. And those of you that will may go down into it." And Eru, merely by saying this, makes it so. From here on, many of the Valar descend into Arda, and in doing so, they agree to be confined there until the end of time. And when they arrive there, they find that it is dark and lifeless. They have entered into the world at the beginning of time, and the task of preparing it for the coming of the children of Ilúvatar now falls upon their shoulders. Battle soon begins with Melkor, who has set himself apart from the others, desiring to rule all others and disrupting all of the workings of the other Valar. Thank you for watching Voice of Geekdom. If you enjoyed this video, click the like button and leave me some feedback in the comments below. You can help the channel to grow by sharing this on your social media sites or sending this video to a friend whom you think might enjoy it. And if you'd like to experience more content like this, hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon to enable notifications, which helps you to stay up to date with my latest uploads.